All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Alpha Freeman. I have a wonderful guest with me today, and welcome to the Next Generation Business Talk. With today's topic, we're going to talk a lot about legacy and have the one and only Ms. Yvonne A. Jones coming straight from Florida. And please, Ms. Yvonne, please take it away and introduce yourself, ma'am.
Okay, hi everyone. I thank you so much, Alpha, for having me here today. And yes, I'm Yvonne A. Jones. I am a relationship building strategist and coach, an international speaker. I'm also a podcast host, and my podcast is Building Profitable Relationships. And I work with mostly women, but also men to help them grow their business by creating a legacy. And I'm using that deliberately because that's what you said, Alpha, because essentially that's what we all want, right? We may not
Absolutely.
even think about it, but we want to create a legacy, something that we can leave for, or whether for our children or whomever, or they may not be interested and they want to sell it, but at least it's something that can sustain itself. So I help business owners, small business owners, and highly motivated entrepreneurs to really hone in on their business by building profitable relationships so they don't have to feel like they have to be marketing experts.
Absolutely. And I understand over the years you've been well experienced in the business world. Nevertheless, with consultations with different companies working for, what advice have you gained over the years, or what knowledge can you share with us regarding a legacy in building a business or even growing one as a whole?
Great question. Let's start with growing one, and let's start with starting one, because that's where laying the right foundation is essential. And I'm going to start with my not laying the right foundation so that this serves for anyone who is listening to this and who is thinking about starting a business. Essentially, there's some certain things you need to have in place. And we won't go into all the legal things and all like that. And it's different if you're starting a home-based business that is a local business from when you're starting an online business. I walked away from corporate America in 2006. I resigned and I walked away because I got to the point where I saw certain things happening. And there's the ageism, although it wasn't shown to me, I observed it. There was discrimination, and again, it wasn't shown to me directly, but I observed it and it really bothered me. And eventually, my dream of being my own boss, finally, I made that decision. However, here's something, and I started a corporation, I formed a corporation, I started a business in my home where I provided one-time resolution. In other words, customer service, because that's been my passion since my very first job. And I started a business in my home for some Fortune 500 companies. I was a subcontractor for them. And that went well. However, I recognized within 2 years or less than 2 years that their idea of customer service and mine were not a match. And so I dissolved that corporation. All good there. Now in 2008, I attended an online seminar for the first time. And I learned about the online world. Because prior to that, I didn't know anything about the online world. Nobody in my circle was engaged in the online world. And so I heard about this. I decided, okay, good. So I was doing a particular thing. I was a skincare and image consultant for many years, even while working in corporate America. So I decided to take that into the online world. Number one, I didn't investigate properly. I took a plunge because my concept was, oh, I'm going to take this into the online world and be able to attract more clients and customers.
Right.
Oh. Okay, sounds good in theory, right?
Right.
Number one, I didn't check with the company's rules first to find out at that time you were not allowed to link back to any of their products and so on and so forth. It was very restricted then. It has totally changed now, but we're talking about 2008. And so when I discovered this, I like, what am I going to do? Fortunately, I loved writing. Composition was my best subject in school. And I was encouraged by my college professor years before that I should write and submit articles, which I never did, to the newspaper. I never did. But now I got online and I found that there was a platform, Easy in Articles, where I could start writing articles. And I did. And I found a mentor who I signed up with to help me to, write good articles. And I took his training. And from there, through that medium, I actually made my first income online because I started promoting an affiliate product. So my lesson for that is, while it turned out well, my lesson for that, the advice which you asked about, is before you start a business, especially an online business, because I can tell you it's a different world. You may have found this out, Alpha. It's a totally different world.
Absolutely.
Right?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I was confident. I knew my stuff. I got the promotions, the accolades, and what have you while working in corporate America and in corporate Jamaica. The promotions and what have you. I came on in the online world, and it was as if I knew nothing. Because I felt like a kid who went to high school in the 12th grade. Everybody knows everybody, and I didn't know anyone, right? I couldn't
Right.
even find a locker room. I couldn't find anything. That's how I felt. So the first advice would be, know what you're going to get, a plan. Take a few steps in where you want to be. Spend some time online. Get to discover what you really want to do. What do you bring? You have to have something you bring. And look at how can you serve people? What problem can you solve for them?
Absolutely.
And using that basic information, you do your research, you create a business plan. Now, when I say create a business plan, I'm not talking about a 100-page business plan, unless you're going to seek investment or you're a startup company where you want investors. Just a simple plan, especially a marketing plan that's going to guide you. Who are your customers going to be? How are you going to find them? How are you going to reach these customers? What problem can you solve for them? If you're already coming with some knowledge. If not, then you have to learn what problem do people have that you can solve. And then you may have to go and do some training for that. So it works either way.
Right.
And at this point, a lot of coaches, a lot of mentors will say you have to find a niche before. My idea on that is that until you get familiar with the online world, you might not know exactly what niche you are going to be settling in. So just do what you can, find out, go into forums. Now we have Facebook groups, go into Facebook groups, do searches on social media to find out what resonates with you. And as again, if you're bringing a certain skill to the market, to the online world, then put in your searches as to where are those people, what's going on there, what do you hear them saying, what problem do they have, and be prepared to stick to it, at least for a while. Eliminate the get rich thing. I'm going to make a lot of money in the online world. You see enough of those videos on YouTube and what have you. Be prepared to stick to it. A lot of times, as there's a quote, I don't remember who said it now, but that success, sometimes a lot of people give up just when success is around the corner, right?
Yeah,
You've heard that, right?
I have. That's true. And this is something where, it's really hard for you to continue going, especially nobody wants to be seen starting something from fresh. because the idea is like, oh man, I have a long way to go, because you're so focused on the result, not realizing the process is more important. And we're
Mm-hmm.
going in business in today's day and age, everybody wants things to be quick. I want to start an online business today and next day generate revenue.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it's
Yeah. And let's
exponentially.
face it, as we know, Alpha, anybody who is in any profession, they have to study, right? And sometimes study for
Absolutely.
years. So why should we be any different when we come online? We expect that the money is going to roll in right away. Fine, there are people there, I don't know, one in how many, few people can do that, but they're coming online with something that they started offline and they're bringing a network with them.
Absolutely. I remember you mentioned something earlier about the women's group that you're currently working with. For the young ladies out there in the world who are starting a new company or we're looking for some empowerment regarding moving forward, not just in the corporate world, but also in their personal lives, what advice do you have for them as a successful business owner yourself?
First thing is know yourself.
Hmm.
Know yourself. It sounds, may sound a little strange, but what I found as a mentor and a coach, a lot of times I ask simple questions in a discussion, and it's something somebody has never thought about.
Hmm.
So, what makes you smile? What makes you light up? What makes you get up every morning?
True.
And, we get so used to the surface thinking that sometimes we don't dig deep and find out what's really in our heart, what's going to draw us to people. And you talked about someone who is starting. Don't pretend to be. You've had this business for years and you're going to try to impress people
Yeah.
that, you are so experienced and you're so knowledgeable. Forget about that. All of us, all we need to do is to be a couple of steps, one or two steps ahead of the next person. And as long as we can pull them up, then we're
True.
being authentic. We just and stay ahead so that we can bring them. And as we
Mm.
bring them, we keep learning so that we're ahead. And I tell you, it makes a greater impression on people and you'll attract more people. It's kind of like, okay, when I first came online, I felt I had to be perfect.
Mm.
But I didn't know I had a problem with perfectionism, you see, Alpha. I didn't know. But I
You
tell you
did.
how it manifested itself because I realized that in the corporate world, working for other people, I did give 110%. And
Uh,
I was rewarded, right? I got the accolades, I got the praises, the this, the that, the promotions. Wonderful. I didn't realize that I was a perfectionist until I started creating my products and I never released them. And even while I was paying coaches, um, yeah, accountability. Yeah, I did it. But they never asked me where is it online? Where's the URL? Because if they did,
okay.
they would have found out, yes, I created it, but I didn't feel it was good enough. Not that I wasn't good enough. I really can't say I felt that way, but about that, but I felt my products were not good enough.
So,
And so I didn't release them. And I had to get help to overcome that issue of perfectionism because that will stop us from progressing. We want everything to be perfect. And essentially, what perfectionism is, Alpha. It's another form of procrastination.
okay. Mm. So I'm glad you mentioned that because it seems as if now you've gotten over that. What have helped you over the years to actually walk away from procrastination or even the perfection, knowing that this has to be perfect in order for me to go from point A to point B. Because nowadays, a lot of people think they have to have the right plan just to go.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And what I will add, my answer to that usually is, well, if you're going from point A to point B, are all the lights going to be green at the same time? No.
Oh, absolutely not.
And if you're waiting for them to be green all this at the same time, you will never start your journey. So what helped me initially, it was a simple book. In fact, he was one of my mentors over the years. And there was a book, uh, I can't remember the first of it. I thought I remembered it. Something Now, Revise Later. So essentially, his whole book was about taking action now. I think it was Take Action Now, Revise Later, something like that. And when I read that book, I was like, oh my goodness, this is what I'm doing.
Hmm.
I'm not taking action. I'm taking action, but I'm waiting for it to be perfect. I want it to be so perfect. I'm not releasing it. And then, just there. And then I worked with mentors to help me so that I was able to transform that thinking into releasing it. Really, go ahead and get it out there. You can always do it now. You can always revise it later. You can
Mhm.
correct it later. You can send a version 2, a
Yep.
version B, or whatever, however you want to define it. Because people are not expecting perfection. And most times they don't know whether it's perfect or not. You're the one who is beating yourself up. And then as I progressed and took my coach's training, that was when I realized that, wait a minute, perfectionism is really another form of procrastination. Because if I don't release it, I can put it off for as long as I want to.
Right.
Myself it's not good enough. So I don't know if I answered your question.
You did. Absolutely, because I think like today's day and age, just the idea that it has to be perfect in order for it to actually gain some audience or to gain some attention. And I realized over the years, even starting businesses and just working and listening and doing this podcast, you
Mhm.
know, a lot of my guest members resemble and say the same thing regarding just do it. And it doesn't matter if it's just taking the first step. It's better than not taking any step at all because over the course of the time period, you tend to just figure out the ways how to put A, B, C, D. You just copy and paste and edit. All those things
Mhm.
intertwines itself. And I think that's the beauty of it. And that's why a lot of people who have great ideas never go through with that idea because it's the thought process of saying, okay, if I do this, am I going to fail? Is it perfect enough? Is it ready? I have to feel as if it's ready. So you do a lot of thinking, but less action, knowing that it's not going to get you anywhere. Especially in business world, anything you're doing whatsoever. Now,
That's true. Yeah, go ahead.
I realized something really awesome, and that's over the years I did some digging and research, you know, and I realized that you have a kind heart in reaching out to women and empowering women. You know, what got you into this women empowerment movement regarding not just growing your assets, but also reaching out and pulling the next generation of women?
That's a great question. I'm trying to remember where it started. The way I was raised, and I've had to work on. I'll tell you what I had to work on too. The way I was raised, it was always to be helpful. And sometimes it didn't serve me well while I was in a corporate situation. It's funny, I can remember this wonderful lady whom I admired so much. And I was about, maybe I had joined one company, my second company, when I was just 19. And I like to help, and I hated just not having something to do.
Oh,
So I would go offer, is there anything I can help you with? Is there anything I can help you with? And I remember she said to me, she called me Vonnie. She said, Vonnie, you need to stop asking people for work because eventually the work is going to become yours. And so many times it proved to be true, right?
mm,
But I've always had a desire to help. I've always had this desire to work with women. And so years ago, I can remember, not women especially, but I didn't like to see I don't want to use the word discrimination, but I didn't like to see people being treated unfairly. And I felt sometimes if they were empowered, this would change the narrative. And so I formed a meetup group years ago, and I had both men and women in that group, but it was all about empowering people, empowering women to be better. I focused, the thing is this, when I started my online business, and a couple of years into my online business, I found that I was attending networking events, and we're leaving with the same thing. You're seeing the same people at many networking events, and there was no value in my eyes of spending the time driving from your home, getting to these meetings. Some of them were paid, some of them were, okay, you had to pay for lunch or dinner or something. And so I formed a meetup, and my meetup was intended to empower everyone. And so every time you left my class, because I had a teaching component, no charge, I didn't charge anything. Every time you left, there was a teaching component. I started bringing in guests. I would do like a teaching component, and I taught something so that every time the business owner, because all of these people are business owners, would leave with something they could use in their business. One of my favorite things at the time, way back then in 2010 to 2012, was teaching LinkedIn, because a lot of people did not understand how to use LinkedIn, and actually that was my very first online course. And then I work with women in other settings. In Fort Lauderdale, I taught at the library. I had sessions at the library where would be inviting children. I worked with children, would read stories, and I would teach them about caring for their skin while I was a skincare consultant.
Absolutely.
And then I remember my daughter laughed and she said, "Mommy, you should have put a patent on that, because Oil of Olay used that later on." My theme was "Love the skin you're in." And that became the tagline for Oil of Olay later on. But, I didn't know anything about putting a patent on it. That wasn't my thought process. But through the years, from teenagers to adults, how to dress for success was another one of my themes. I just wanted to empower people. And then I do the same. I have a 15 Wiser community on Facebook. I have one gentleman, and the rest are women. It's over, about 700 women.
Wow.
Not everyone is active, but that's my community. Again, I formed that community to be able to share ideas and so forth. It's always been a passion of mine. And maybe it goes back, Alpha, to the fact that I really wanted to be a teacher.
Oh,
When I was a when I was a little girl,
there we
my goal
go.
was to be a teacher. And every tree around my home in Jamaica had a name because they were my students.
That's awesome. That's awesome. What do you have for let's say the woman that wants to join your group, who's currently listening to this podcast and are interested in being a part of this group? What are the steps to get into it, or like, fees, anything of that nature?
Well, my 50 and Wiser community is free, but as it says, it's 50 and wiser. And I
Yeah.
took a vote. Surprisingly, there were many younger people who wanted to join that group. But I asked the ladies way back when I formed that group, and they said, "No, we've earned it. Let's keep it for the 50 and wiser." But I also have a mastermind, which is going pretty well. And it's the Profitable Relationship Building Mastermind. Essentially, my research shows that there's so many individuals who want to just focus on growing their business rather than thinking that they have to be a marketing expert. And so I teach them how to grow their business. We have question and answers and all like that. And yes, there is a cost attached to that. There's an investment. And if anybody wants to know more about that, they can reach out to me. But I do want to share a couple of things though.
Okay.
And you talk about the next generation.
Yes, ma'am.
And we know that, I think we mentioned this earlier, there's a microwave mentality where everything is going to happen fast.
Mm.
And what I have observed over the years is that a lot of young people don't realize that the success that their parents may have had did not come overnight. It took years for them to achieve it. But unfortunately, there for many, and I never like to generalize because there are always exceptions and there are always individuals who do not follow the norm. So this idea that of entitlement is something that I do find is a common thing with not just the next generation, but just sometimes individuals just grow up with that because they've had the path paved for them. And so they feel they're entitled to certain things. My thought, my advice on that is nothing comes easy. Or nothing generally comes easy. So it's going to take effort on your part. Every person can reach their desired goals, but they're going to have to work for it. And so your associates are going to have an impact on you. Jim Rohn said we're like the 5 people that we hang around with. And people are going to have an influence on us. And if we're around people who feel that they're entitled to this and that without having to do the work, that's not going to be the best influence. I talk about the balcony people and the basement people. They could be your family members. And it doesn't mean that they're bad people, but the balcony people pull you down because when you suggest something, when you talk about wanting to elevate yourself, they're always there. Why are you doing that? You're not going to succeed. You need to reduce your association with people like that and associate instead with the balcony people, the people who will pull you up, the people who want to see you succeed. They may be friends, they may be mentors, they may be coaches, they may be just a good associate who can be a good accountability partner for you.
Absolutely. And that's a really key notation to piggyback on, because I think nowadays, like you said, the microwave mentality is something that is so easy to sleep up on. And a lot of young generation and people in general, tend to not realize that what it takes to get to the point or the successes that they've gained. Like yourself, for example, the years that you've had in the corporate industry, years and experiences in dealing with people, businesses, you name it, and you have some kid or somewhere just wants to come and just jump into that role thinking they can do it just like how you did it. And I realizing, the experience itself, it takes some time to grow and build that. And you said a really key component, and that's to slow down and take your time. And I think that's something that's really important for a lot of people to digest. It's not going to happen all in one night. Your parents worked hard to get to where they're at. But over the years of patience and perseverance, it's going to manifest itself into reality. And that's just having that patience and understanding your why, like you stated earlier. And I really do appreciate you actually touching base on that, because that's something that a lot of people don't really tend to understand quite clearly. you know. But lastly, the last question that I have for you here, and this is something that I was thinking about myself personally, is the transition that you made from the corporate world into the business world. Was it hard for you, or was it something that you feel as if you already got it locked down and you're ready to go? What got you to say, okay, I want to go now?
Well, my transition, because I didn't transition immediately into the online world, I first transitioned into an offline business. What I did for that, I prepared myself in the sense that, and I never shared how I started my love for customer service, but we'll share that another time. But even though my first job way back when, just 6 weeks out of high school, I was employed by the largest commercial bank, international bank in Jamaica at the time. I was 16 years old, and I literally fell in love with customer service. I was an introvert. And when I realized how important it was to make people feel valued, it took the spotlight from myself, from me, and I put it on the customer who came into the customers who came into the bank. And when I saw the difference it made, they stood taller. They regained their confidence because,
Right.
when you're going into, if you've been into a place where you know nobody, it kind of, you kind of shrunk and you have that uncertain look. And then once you're acknowledged and made to feel welcome, you straighten up and, you regain your confidence. So what I will share with you is that training way back when served me well over the years, and especially when I moved to another international company and dealt with internal and external customers. So I share all of that to say I was not new to customer service, because even though I had learned it way back then, everything that I did after that, going into human resources and so on, certainly I applied the principles I learned. And then later on, I took customer service training again to become a certified customer service professional. Yet when I knew that I was going to be forming my own company, once again, I took some training to prepare myself for that, because it
Mm,
had been many years that I'd done anything like that. And so I prepared myself. What I will share with you, that as far as the financial side, and I'm glad you asked that question, because this is so very important. The general rule is to know how you're going to be paying your bills for the next 6 months. Because
absolutely.
even though I was going to be being paid, I was going to be paid immediately. It wasn't like I was going to on the online world where I didn't know where my income was going to be coming from. One of the things that I would advise anyone who is starting a different business from where they are, especially if they're moving from where they're being paid, whether it's corporate or some other kind of thing, and where they have to transition, is to know how your bills are going to be paid for 6 months, so that if you're not well, you don't have to worry, oh, I'm not going to be able to work. If something happens with the job at some, or you don't make an income, especially for people coming online now, if you don't make an income for a while, then you're not in a panic mode. That's added stress that's going to be coming on you. You're taking on added stress when you don't know how your bills are going to be paid. So for me, getting back to I just wanted to add that because I think it's so very important. So for me, what I did was to make sure I was prepared mentally, so that when I was ready, I actually decided to leave about 6 months earlier than I had planned, but things had got so bad, and I just got to the point where it's like my car could feel it. So it's also like my car started slowing down as I got closer to work, because I just didn't want to be there anymore. I
Mm,
just did not want to be there, and I was just worried about what was the day going to be like, right?
mm, right.
So I left, but there was preparation. It's important to prepare for your next mood. Sure, there are people who walk into work today and they tell them, oh, today's your last day,
Yeah.
especially here in the United States. And, that's it. But when you're going to be doing a deliberate and you have to prepare your mind, your mindset. It's a different thing when you're working for yourself. An entrepreneurial mindset is very different from the mindset of an employee. So
Mhm.
it takes time to adjust and all of those things, because now you no longer have anyone telling you what to do. You're
Right.
going to have to create a structure in your business,
Mm,
because now you are the CEO, or you're the boss of your business, and eventually you want to become the CEO of your business. So there's a planning stage that should not be skipped.
mm,
And that is why, falling for the get rich schemes don't work, because then it
absolutely.
doesn't allow you to plan. It's a business. So there's still, like, if you want your business to succeed, there's certain steps that you have to take. And if you eliminate them, it's going to show up later on.
That is so true. And I think that's a really great way to see things is to have a plan. You don't just want to jump into a river not knowing how deep it is.
Exactly.
It's really tough, especially for those who, like you said earlier, coming to work and they tell you this is your last day, and for situations like that, and this is just a quick question that just came out of my thought, you know, what advice do you have for any person right now who wants to start their business, but nevertheless, are thinking about leaving, and this is talking about finances, meaning, you know, what they should be doing with their current money, putting it into certain accounts to save, or just like the same, because when the day comes, you don't want to come into work and say, okay, this is your last day. How can they prepare themselves mentally into that transitional phase?
Well, my first disclaimer would be I'm not a financial advisor.
Absolutely.
And but just from a human to human standpoint, it's putting something away for the rainy day. There is a book that I would, and this is for those who actually go into business. There's a book that's on my shelf by Mike Malkowitz. It's called Profit First.
Okay.
I would encourage everyone who is in business to purchase that book, to get that book, because it's a great reminder that many times we will spend hours and hours of going into our business and we're working hard and we don't pay ourselves. He talks about paying yourself first. And so even with your, and he gives a great example of his mother, that she always had an envelope marked emergency funds. And so it makes sense that as your times are tough, and sometimes you don't seem to have enough left over, as you say, to save, but it's a good idea to make it a habit to put
Mhm.
something away, because you don't know what can happen. And for a lot of businesses right now, many businesses have removed certain benefits. So for many people, they don't even have health benefits anymore, while they're still working for someone else. So you never know what can happen. So it makes sense to just put something away. And if it's something you plan that you're going to be leaving and leaving a steady income and start where your income is going to be uncertain for a while, then you should have at least 6 months of bills stored away before you make that move.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for that advice, Ms. Yvonne. And I think it's a really great thing, not only to understand the value of putting something away for rainy day fund, but also understanding that, it's very important to have a sense of security, especially in a business world in today's day and age. I'm going to do a quick transition here because today I got a quick message from my mentor, John Allen. And I understand we're part of the same mentorship slash mastermind group with with Peter Beckman. Unfortunately, Peter's wife is currently going through some stuff at the hospital. And I
Mhm.
want to shout out my prayers to him and his family and friends so that keep him in his prayers, anything that's going out, so the men upstairs can take great care of him. And I understand we also are part of the same mastermind group. And I just want to get it out there for anybody who's a great friend of Peter Beckman. This is for you and your family. Now, we're going to do.
Absolutely. And sorry, and I will say yes to that because I'm aware of it.
Mhm.
And my heart goes out to Peter and his family. My heart and my prayer goes out on behalf of his wife, most of all, because I don't know all the details, but I know that having gone through something like that several years ago,
Mhm.
that I just pray that she gets the best doctors, caring doctors who are willing and able to take care of her because she's going to need them.
Amen. And thank you for that. And lastly, we had a really great conversation here, Ms. Giovanna. What advice or what last thoughts do you have for the next generation business talk? I know it's been a great pleasure talking to you today. You shared so much, not only the wisdom and knowledge in regarding the businesses in the corporate American world, for women empowerment, for transitional phases. Most importantly, what are some last thoughts that you have to say so that the next generation of people out there listening can piggyback on and learn?
Thank you, Alpha, for that question. A couple of things come to mind is that always be learning,
Hmm.
always be open to learning. There's a difference, however, a word of caution. Everything goes with a little word of caution, right? Be careful who you listen to.
Absolutely.
Search out for people who are authentic, and who have your best interests at heart, and always be listening and learning and adapting and adopting as well. Because you may have to change your mindset about certain things, how you view things, but just be open. Just be open. And one other thing I want to say, especially for someone who is new to business, but for all of us who are in business, don't forget to care for yourself.
Mm.
Practice self-care. It's too easy to sit behind this computer or in front of this computer for hours and hours and not take care of yourself. Spend time with your family, spend time with your loved ones, and be balanced. And when I say balance, it's not never going to be 50-50. It just means you know where your priorities are and you allocate them. And get out away from your home office. If you're working from home, get out sometimes, go meet people in your community or meet people, take time to meet people online. There's a potential for collaboration, and just expand your thinking so that you can grow as a person
Mm.
and grow in your business.
Absolutely. And thank you for that. And thank you so much for all the words and knowledge and wisdom that you share with us today in this episode of Next Generation Business Talk and Building a Legacy. And just to piggyback off of that, for my audience member who are listening today, it's very important to understand what it means to build a legacy. And that legacy starts from understanding who you are, but nevertheless having that patience and the courage to keep moving forward. Understand that in the business world, certain times things are not going to be perfect. All right. So don't have high expectations and having that perfectionism to do things right. But nevertheless, understand that you can start by just taking the first step, and that's starting and doing things as it's supposed to be done. All right. But most importantly, show some caring, show some love, bring the next person up, and pay attention to the world around you. Have love for yourself, have love for your family, and continue to keep working towards your goals. But most importantly, and nevertheless, never give up. All right. This is a legacy that's being built for generations to come. Listen to those who are around you and be careful what they have to say. This is Alpha Freeman with the Next Generation Business Talk. I have with me today Ms. Yvonne Jones. Thank you so much for all the knowledge and wisdom and understanding that you've given to us. And I will come back to you next week with a new episode. This is the legacy of the Next Generation Business Talk. Thank you all and have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you for having me, Alpha. I really enjoyed our time together.
Likewise. Thank you. Bye bye. All right. That was awesome. I
Did you
mean,
stop? You're still